The war in Europe was nearing its end, but that did not mean the danger had disappeared. In many parts of Germany, surrender had created confusion instead of peace. Soldiers who had survived years of brutal fighting were now trapped between defeat and fear. Some accepted the end quietly, while others refused to let go of their pride. It was during this tense and unpredictable period that one of the most shocking moments connected to General George S. Patton reportedly took place. A routine military meeting suddenly turned into a life-or-death confrontation when a German officer unexpectedly pulled a gun. What happened next became one of the stories soldiers repeated for years afterward. George Patton was already famous across Europe by that point in the war. American troops viewed him as aggressive, fearless, and sometimes dangerously bold. German forces respected him as one of the Allies' toughest commanders. Patton believed that hesitation could destroy an army faster than enemy fire. He constantly pushed his men forward and demanded confidence even in terrible situations. Unlike many high-ranking officers, he often traveled close to active front lines, exposing himself to risks that shocked even his own soldiers. To Patton, leadership meant showing strength at all times, especially when others were afraid. The atmosphere across Germany during the final months of World War II was extremely unstable. Cities had been reduced to rubble, communication systems were collapsing, and military discipline was beginning to disappear. Many German officers were exhausted physically and mentally after years of non-stop war. Some feared punishment after surrendering, while others still hoped for some kind of miracle that would save Germany from total defeat. Allied commanders understood that even peaceful meetings carried danger because emotions were running high on every side. According to accounts that spread among American troops, Patton attended a meeting involving German military representatives shortly after Allied forces gained control of another area. The purpose of the discussion was supposed to be simple. Officers were expected to cooperate regarding surrender arrangements and military control. But from the beginning, the atmosphere inside the room felt tense. American guards carefully watched every movement, while the German representatives appeared cold and bitter. One particular Wehrmacht officer stood out immediately. Witnesses later claimed that he looked calm on the outside, but anger was clearly visible in his face and body language. As the discussion continued, the tension inside the room slowly increased. Nobody shouted, but the pressure was obvious. Patton remained direct and confident, speaking with the authority that had made him famous throughout the war. The German officer reportedly became more uncomfortable as the conversation moved forward. Some believed he was humiliated by the collapse of Germany. Others thought he simply hated the idea of surrendering to the Americans. Whatever the reason, something suddenly changed. Without warning, the officer reached into his uniform and pulled out a pistol. The room instantly exploded into chaos. American soldiers grabbed their weapons and aimed directly at the officer. Chairs moved across the floor as men prepared for gunfire. For a few terrifying seconds, everyone believed shots were about to be fired. The tension became unbearable. One nervous movement from either side could have turned the meeting into a bloodbath, but what shocked witnesses most was Patton's reaction. Instead of diving for cover or stepping backward, Patton reportedly remained standing exactly where he was. He stared directly at the officer with a cold expression that immediately caught everyone off guard. Soldiers later claimed that Patton looked almost calm during the confrontation. While others froze in panic, he refused to show fear. That reaction alone changed the entire mood inside the room. The German officer had expected panic. He had expected fear and confusion. Instead, he found himself staring at a man who refused to be intimidated. Patton reportedly spoke firmly and calmly, without raising his voice. Nobody knew exactly what would happen next. American guards were ready to fire instantly if the officer moved again. Some soldiers later admitted they believed Patton was seconds away from being killed. Others said they were more afraid of accidentally starting a shootout themselves. The silence inside the room became almost unbearable. The officer still held the pistol, but the situation was no longer under his control. Patton's refusal to panic created hesitation. Slowly, the confidence began to disappear from the German officer's face. Surrounded by armed American soldiers and facing a commander who would not back down, he started realizing there was no escape from the situation. Witnesses claimed the officer's hand began shaking slightly as the pressure increased. The psychological battle had completely shifted. What started as an attempt to threaten Patton had turned into a moment of weakness for the officer himself. Finally, the weapon was lowered. American troops quickly moved forward and secured the officer before any shots could be fired. The danger had passed, but the room remained silent for several moments afterward. Many soldiers could hardly believe what they had just witnessed. According to stories told later, Patton showed almost no emotional reaction once the situation ended. Instead of making a dramatic scene, he reportedly returned to the discussion as if nothing unusual had happened. That calmness left a deep impression on the men around him. News of the confrontation quickly spread through American ranks. Some soldiers viewed Patton's behavior as unbelievable courage. Others thought it was reckless and unnecessarily dangerous. But nearly everyone agreed on one thing. Very few commanders would have reacted the same way under that kind of pressure. The incident only added to Patton's growing legend during the war. Moments like this also revealed the emotional collapse happening across Europe during W2's final days. Many soldiers on both sides were exhausted beyond reason. Fear, humiliation, anger, and desperation pushed men toward unpredictable actions. The German officer's decision to pull a gun reflected the chaos and instability that existed even after defeat had become unavoidable. For Patton, however, the confrontation became another example of the image he had spent years building. He believed fear could spread quickly among troops, and commanders had to remain strong no matter the danger. Whether people viewed him as fearless or reckless, stories like this explain why his name still remains one of the most discussed in World War II history. In a room where everyone expected panic, Patton chose intimidation instead of fear, and for one unforgettable moment, that decision may have saved lives.